Joining me today is Representative Chip Roy of the 21st Congressional District of Texas. Representative Roy, thank you so much for joining me today. It's always great to see you and to have you on.
My pleasure. Happy to join you.
Vice President Kamala Harris is visiting the southern border today, June 25th. It's been over 90 days since she was assigned back on March 25th to address the root causes of the border crisis. Now she's heading to El Paso, Texas. I want to get your thoughts on her visit itself and also what you expect her to accomplish while she's down there.
Well, I don't expect the vice president to accomplish a dang thing when she goes to the border because I believe this is pretty much a photo op driven by the fact that we were shaming her for lack of desire or the lack of forethought to come down to the border. And now that she is coming to the border, allegedly on behalf of the president, she's going to El Paso, which is not where the crisis is. And you know, to put that in perspective, people think, oh, you're going to Texas, you're going to the border. I mean, great, you're going to El Paso, that's fine. But to put that in perspective, that is literally something like, I don't know the exact mileage, 1,000 miles from McAllen. I mean, it's probably 800 miles or something from McAllen. Go look it up. But it is heckin' gone from McAllen, right? It is a long drive. I mean, and so the crisis is in McAllen, Texas. The crisis is in Laredo, Texas. The vice president's not going there because she doesn't have an answer for what the Biden administration has been doing, which has caused this crisis. She knows that because they know they have adopted policies that have weakened our border, endangered Americans, empowered cartels, and made migrants be put in danger, including young girls who are abused by these cartels for profit and put into the human and sex trafficking trade. Like, we know that. We see it. It's happening in the district I represent. In Bernie, Texas, in San Antonio, 9 immigrants in a car, 2 in the trunk. One had paid $4,000 to pick grapes and thought he was coming over and was going to get to go work. And instead, he and that whole carload of immigrants were being driven by an American citizen, employee of the Cartel de Noreste of Los Zetas out of Nuevo Laredo, to go to a stash house in Houston to get put in the human trafficking and sex trafficking trade. Thankfully, our law enforcement stopped them in Bernie. Thankfully, our local law enforcement is dealing with it. We're getting no help from the feds. We're getting no help from the president and the vice president. We have cartels with gunmen that are coming across our river. They're infiltrating and endangering our community. They've driven 7,500 pounds of fentanyl through and across our borders that we've captured. That's not counting what we haven't captured. We've had 700,000 apprehensions this year. We have an unbelievably uncontrolled crisis on our border with cartels having operational control of the river. The vice president doesn't care. I will renew my request that she debate me anywhere, anytime on these issues. She won't because she would lose. A high school debate team, given 10 facts about the border, would absolutely destroy her in a debate or the president. They know it. They're afraid of it. And that's why they're hiding for a photo op in El Paso.
So I just want to reference a memo and some numbers that you actually presented to the vice president earlier this month. You talk about how in May there were 170,000 apprehensions, and in April there were more than 178,000 apprehensions. And then comparing that to April of 2020, there were only 17,000 apprehensions. So obviously you can see how this, just basically looking at the numbers, you can see how this crisis at the border has just exploded. Now, something else that was asked of the White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki earlier this week that I want to get your thoughts on is President Trump is heading to the border next week, and she was asked about this of the timing of, you know, the vice president all of a sudden deciding to go. Do you think President Trump going to the border had anything to do with her decision? And you know, how do you think that played into it?
Well, look, we're absolutely delighted to have President Trump come to the border. I will hopefully be there in attendance when he is at the border with Governor Abbott. The president was a champion of securing the border of the United States and had moved the ball well down the field toward the direction of where we needed to go. We still had many, many yards to go to get it in the end zone because Democrats were basically trying to block us at every turn, right? They were trying to stop the ability to have proper funding for ICE, for Border Patrol. They didn't want us to fund construction of the wall, or frankly, any infrastructure, roads, clearing the cane, the things we need to have actual operational control of our border, because they don't want us to. That's just that simple. Democrats do not want us to have a secure border. It's unfathomable. It's indefensible. But that's the truth. President Trump recognized the reality of the importance of a secure border, and to make sure that we would have an immigration system that would function. We were using Title 42 to stop people who had the pandemic and have COVID from coming in. We were able to have a return to Mexico program because the president forced Mexico to the table using trade and made them work with us to get that done. If we'd have kept going down that road, we could be beating back the cartels. We could have operational control of our border. We would still have immigrants be able to come to this country. We would still have people being able to claim asylum. But we have many things we need to do to change our laws. The president going to the river, meaning President Trump, going to the Rio Grande, going down to McAllen, going down with Governor Abbott. And Governor Abbott deserves a lot of credit for stepping up right now and for saying we're going to stand in the breach as Texas. And Governor DeSantis backing us up and sending resources. Every state in the union should send resources to the state of Texas to help us secure the border, because dadgummit, Texas is going to secure this border if the United States of America is failing to uphold its end of the bargain of our having a union. And I've got people in Texas that are starting to rattle about, what are we getting out of this equation? What are we getting out of being a part of a union that won't secure its own border? Because you know what? It's our border too, as a Texas state. And we have a duty as a state, as a sovereign people, to defend ourselves. This is pure John Locke kind of stuff. The first duty of government, to secure the people and to secure us and take care of our communities. So the governor's doing that. I'm glad the president's going. And I promise you, the Vice President Harris and the president, they say, oh, well, you know, Trump's going down the border. I guess we're going to have to get you down there and get you down there first. But she's going to have a photo op. The president's going to be down meeting with people who know what's really going on the border.
When you talk about Texas and the fact that it is your border, I mean, I'm up here in Virginia and I have never been to Texas before. So when I think about the southern border, you know, I feel so far removed from actually, you know, what's going on down there. The Daily Caller has reporters on the ground sort of documenting really what's been going on. I mean, just taking videos of hundreds of migrants crossing the border every single night. It's just incredible to see, you know, what's going on down there, and even compared to last year. Just one last question about the vice president and her approach to, you talked about this a little bit earlier, but her approach to going down to the border. Do you think that, you know, she goes down to El Paso, right? You know, you mentioned how it's not really the epicenter of the crisis. It's not really going to showcase what's really going on down there. Do you anticipate that she might change her approach at all to immigration? The Biden administration might, you know, rely more on what President Trump was implementing, or do you think it might just stay the way that it's been?
Well, first of all, I just got to tell you something about my biggest concern, and it's real and legitimate, and that is that you've never been to Texas, and that's really concerning, because you know you're missing out a big chunk of your life if you haven't visited the great state of Texas. So we need to fix that for you. You have an invitation to come anytime to join Team Boy and come down to the state of Texas and have barbecue, Tex-Mex, and listen to some good music. But but that aside, what I would tell you is that I'm a hopeful and prayerful person. And so I would always believe that it's possible for the current president, vice president, leadership of this country to wake up and recognize their constitutional duty to put America first, to put the people first, to carry out their duty to defend the United States and secure our nation. But their history would suggest that they're not going to do that. History would suggest that the vice president is going to give us more words and to give us more photo ops, and not actually do the hard work of securing the border. And actually, I'll say I'm wrong. It's not that much hard work, actually. It's just the willingness to do it. You just have to be willing to say that we have a duty to secure the border and then take the steps to do it, like President Trump did. I'll say one other point. You talked about how it's hitting us close to home in Texas. But Governor DeSantis, in his speech about sending resources from Florida to Texas, he fully gets what people who know the facts get. For example, Mark Morgan, the former head of the Border Patrol, I was talking to him the other night. The vast majority of the opioid crisis in our country, the meth problems that we have, the heroin, the fentanyl problems, we've got marijuana now with fentanyl laced in it that's killing our kids. But the vast majority of the drug problems and the addictions in our country are from narcotics that are pouring through the southwest border. So this border crisis is your crisis. Yes, it's hitting Texas very closely, but all of those drugs in your community, from Ohio and West Virginia down to Florida, all throughout the Southwest, New York City, all throughout our country, Much of it is coming through the southwest border. And don't kid yourselves, China understands this, and China's got their fingers and tentacles up into Mexico, into Central America, and into the Western Hemisphere. And we are missing our duty right now to secure our nation, but go further, have a strong Western Hemisphere to push against China, to build economic growth, create opportunity, help Guatemala and El Salvador, Honduras, Mexico have strong rule-based economies and defending the rule of law, rather than a narco-terror state right across the Rio Grande River that is now undermining our own national security.
Such a great point that you just brought up about the drugs and the narcotics that are going into the interior of the United States. I mean, it's just such an important point that should be made that, you know, even though I'm up here in Virginia, something that happens at the southern border could eventually and is eventually going to come up to these states. So I appreciate you mentioning that point, because it is so important for people to understand that, you know, distance, you know, you may see distance between you and the southern border, but it is a real problem and it is going to affect you one way or the other.
And it's not just eventual, right? These are El Salvadorian in and around the Washington, D.C. area, and MS-13. It's narcotics in D.C. that are pouring across our southwest border. It's here. It's now. It's in your communities. There is human trafficking and sex trafficking occurring within 20 miles of your house. Whoever's listening to this, it's happening. There are people that are being exploited. We have essentially modern day slavery in the United States of America, and it is because Democrats and a few Republicans refuse to secure the border of the United States. Our job is to do it, and that's one of my callings.
Absolutely. Well, Representative Roy, I really appreciate you coming on to talk with me about such important topics. It's always great to have you, and I hope you'll join me again soon. Maybe we'll get a little update about Kamala Harris's, or Vice President Harris's, visit to the border and what's happening in Texas and throughout the country. So thank you so much.
Thank you for everything. I really enjoyed joining the show.